Hi, and welcome to All American Atlas, where we deep dive into all of the wonderful, weird, and fascinating things that make up the USA. Today, we're going over 9 things you didn't know about the American presidential retreat, Camp David. I have to admit, I knew very little about Camp David before researching for this video, so these 9 things are going to be new for all of us. Now, Camp David, if we ask the White House website directly, is the president's country residence. They state very officially that it gives the president an opportunity for solitude and tranquility, as well as an ideal place to work and host foreign leaders, which seems like a fancy way of saying the president can't very easily take a vacation to Disney World like the rest of us, so they need another option.
Nestled in the Maryland mountains, NSF Thermont serves the President of the United States and provides the first family with a healthy, safe, and uniquely private place to work and relax.
Mission's very important because we serve the Commander-in-Chief. We provide him and his guests a relaxing environment, stress-free environment. How many places around this world can the President be stress-free? Not very many.
It actually began as a retreat for federal employees, but Franklin Roosevelt was like, hand that over, I need a break. So he established Camp David as the retreat for presidents it is today. So here we go, 9 things you did not know about Camp David. Number 1, you'll find some sources online that state that the location of Camp David is secret. It is not. It used to be, but with the invention of Google Maps and satellite view, it got figured out, and you can actually see its location on Google Maps these days. That being said, clearly you cannot do street view from within Camp David, and when you look at the map for the national park in Maryland that it is located in, they definitely don't include the location and instead act like there is nothing there. So while you can find out where it is, it's not exactly advertised, and it's not viewable from any publicly accessible part of the park. Number 2. Every president has had different opinions and experiences of Camp David. For instance, Lyndon B. Johnson clearly enjoyed a pool party there, Gerald Ford was all about the snowmobiling, Bill Clinton liked air hockey, and George W. Bush enjoyed a golf cart ride. But my favorite fun fact is that Jimmy Carter contemplated closing Camp David entirely during his presidency to save some money. But then he visited and he changed his mind and suddenly found the budget for it. Number 3, Camp David was named for Eisenhower's grandson, David, which is a boring fact, but sort of an interesting fact in how boring it is, because you would expect a more in-depth meaning of the presidential retreat instead of just a grandpa who wondered what he should name the retreat and then looked at a picture of his grandkid. That part isn't necessarily true, by the way. I don't exactly know how Eisenhower settled on his grandson being the namesake, besides he clearly thought highly of him. The original name was actually Shangri-La, the exotic-sounding name chosen by FDR, but Eisenhower felt the name was un-American and it needed a change. Number 4. Camp David isn't just for the president to use for his own personal vacations. He or she can use it for that, but it also has 18 cabins which can host guests from around the world. And of course, the Secret Service and other armed guards have to be on site at all times. So it's less of a completely solo getaway and more of a summer camp style vibe. That is, if a summer camp was less a place for making friendship bracelets and more a place for world-changing events like the Camp David Accords, Camp David Summit, and the G8 Summit. Bonus fun fact, the first foreign visitor to Camp David was Winston Churchill from Great Britain, who attended a meeting there in 1943. Number 5. Of all the presidents that have been in office since Camp David was established, Reagan managed the most visits at 189, with Nixon in second place at 160 visits. Truman spent the least amount of time there with only 10 visits and generally felt the whole place unnecessary. Gerald Ford also wasn't a huge fan and didn't go often. Now, the Bush family, on the other hand, really loved Camp David, with George H.W. Bush at 124 visits and George W. Bush at 150 visits. George H.W. Bush's daughter, Dorothy, was actually married at Camp David in 1992, the first wedding held there. Number 6, during Nixon's presidency, he did not want to become one with nature and actually had the nature trails paved over. But when Reagan came into office, he restored the nature trails so he could horseback ride at Camp David. Number 7, speaking of activities, Camp David is like a full-on resort with amenities. This is not a Motel 6. There's a movie room, trails for horseback riding like we talked about, walking trails, a basketball court, a fitness center, opportunities for snowmobiling, cross-country skiing, and there used to be a skating pond. There's tennis courts, a bowling alley, and a chapel for church services. It seems it would be impossible to be bored here, and if you were bored here, it would be your own fault. Number 8, on the Camp David grounds, golf carts reign supreme, and actually it's one of the only places where the president is allowed to drive while in office. And by drive, I mean drive the golf cart. Number 9, despite being a retreat, you don't actually get days off as a president, so the property is well equipped for any sort of official business that the president might need to take care of while there. They can't just put Camp David on their out of office and go on airplane mode. They're still very much on duty. So while it does look like a nice place to relax and to get away, and plenty of presidents do use it for that reason, it's still technically qualified as a military installation, and it's owned by the Department of Defense. Honestly, at this point, Disney World does start to sound a little bit more fun. However, at only a 30-minute helicopter ride from DC, and with a long history dating back to its creation in the 1930s under FDR, Camp David has played an important part in the presidential history of America and will likely continue to do so for years to come. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.